Diamond producer and OG YouTube content creator Bolo the producer has recently dropped a video titled Why You Should Learn to Record in FL Studio. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and react to this video so that way you walk away with double the value. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Listen, a shift is happening right here, right now. And if you are a studio owner or if you are an engineer, I highly suggest that you learn how to use FL Studio. Now, I know a lot of you guys right now are going to be saying, Bolo, you're reaching. You're saying some crazy stuff right now. Like, why are you even bringing this thing back up? But I'm going to tell you guys what I went through the past couple days, okay? Now, as you guys know, I didn't really put any videos out this week because I've actually been in the studio working. And let me tell you what actually happened. Well, I was working with a new artist. He has a deal, and his A&R hooked him up with me, and he was like, yo, can we use the studio for him to record some of his songs? He's pretty much like a self-contained type of artist. He knows how to make his beats. He knows how to record himself. He knows how to do all of that stuff. So I was like, cool. So me knowing how a lot of these young artists are, I always ask this one question. What do they use to record? And he was like, hey, don't laugh because I know this is not what you use, but he uses FL Studio. I don't know why he uses it, but he uses it. So I was like, cool. I was like, I know how to use FL Studio. I'm cool. He's like, you know how to use that? I'm like, yeah, I know how to use it. It's cool. I said a lot of, young artists are using it. So the kid comes in, the kid plugs up his laptop. He brings his own audio interface, which he did have an RME interface, which is very cool. And then he proceeds to make a beat on FL Studio. So I'm like, cool. He's just making a beat on FL. It's cool. Mm-hmm. Then he's like, hey, I need to plug in the mic to my interface so I can go ahead and record my vocals. And I was like, cool, no problem. You know what I'm saying? So while we was in the main room, he wanted to record in the main room, but then he was like, I really want to like record in the booth. He was like, but I want to record in the booth, but I really don't have anybody to like really record me because I got to record myself. I was like, well, one of the options is you could take your laptop and stuff in there and you could record in the booth if you want to record in there. You could sit on the couch, whatever you want to do. Or, I could try to record you out here. And then he was like, cool. He was like, do you know how to work FL Studio? And I was like, well, I know how to make beats in it and I know how to run some audio into it, but I've never really done like a full session in it, right? Because, hey, look. I'm an older producer, older engineer. I'm used to like ProTools, Logic, Studio One. That's like my gear choice. I like to use those. He was like, let me show you how to record on FL. He said, because all of my friends, we record on FL. It just seems better to do it that way because we could just buy the program and then we don't have to pay for any more updates or anything.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. For a recording artist, especially in this era, I started using Pro Tools. I believe I started on like Pro Tools 8, making beats in FL Studio and all these other DAWs. But for this newer generation, I can see how FL Studio is an all-in-one platform DAW where you can make really fire beats. It's really intuitive. There's an entire community on how to create. I can't see why they would be like, why would I use something like Pro Tools to do anything else? Because I have FL Studio and I can record my vocals. I can mix everything. I can do everything essentially that I need without, unfortunately, Avid has Pro Tools users having to continuously pay for the product, and FL Studio comes with free updates. So what he's saying is making a lot of sense so far. So let's go ahead and get back into the video.
To pay for updates and stuff like that. So I'm like, yeah, that's kind of true. I was like, well, Logic, you don't have to pay for any updates because, once you buy it one time, you get all the updates and everything. Studio One, when you do purchase like a yearly subscription or whatever like that, Once the subscription is over, you keep that perpetual license, whatever. And then Pro Tools, you got to keep upgrading.
Exactly.
So he was like, we don't really have that much money, so what we do is we just all use FL Studio because we're always sending all of our files and stuff through FL Studio. And it's like him and like 4 other guys who he works with. And then they just send all of their projects and stuff like that. And they all have like the same plugins and everything. So everything is pretty much contained with them. Like, he's the guy that makes the beats and records. His other homeboy goes through it and rearranges it. This guy, he acts as like the mixing guy, and then the other guy's like the finisher. So he can just like, he does like some stuff to kind of finish it up, and that's like their little network.
That makes sense.
And we sat there for 2 days, and he recorded 6 songs in FL Studio. And then it kind of dawned on me, while we was recording, because at first it was kind of weird, but then once I got to the concept of it, I was like, this is actually kind of cool because I like the sound of FL. I think FL has one of the best sounds of all the DAWs out there. I think FL is just, for some reason, the drums and stuff sound a little bit bigger and a little bit fatter. I don't know what they do, but it just has a better sound to it. And I'm being truthfully honest with you, I was kind of blown away on how easy it was for me to actually learn how to record in it and for me to learn how to move around in it. Now, I'm not like a certified pro in it, but I did move around in it very fast, and I felt it kind of cool to do it because we had the beat and everything pulled up. He was recording his vocals. We did everything in it. We mixed it. And it sounded pretty cool for the mixes that we had.
I think it's important to have at least a foundational understanding of programs like FL Studio, Logic, and anything else that artists may be recording in, just because you don't want to be totally lost when you're looking at the DAW with the artist that you're working with as a producer. I will say that from what I've seen in FL Studio, as far as recording, it's definitely not on the level of Pro Tools, just because Pro Tools has a lot of other things going on that when I see content creators like Blackboy Max recording in some of his content, I'm like, ooh, if I was in Pro Tools, I would do A, B, C, D, and E to keep myself organized and kind of keep the session flowing. But I see certain things that he does, and I'm like, okay, is this just not possible? Or is this just some type of limitation and understanding of, how he's using FL Studio as a producer, recording engineer in his process? So I definitely see where Bolo is coming from. I still would encourage the newer generation, vice versa, to still know at least an baseline understanding of Pro Tools so you can move around, because studio owners, like people like Bolo and other studio owners that you're going to see in your city or bigger cities that you may travel to as a producer, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be using Pro Tools, maybe Logic, maybe Studio One, but a sure bet is to make sure you understand Pro Tools, because like one of my guests on my Made in the Studio podcast, Andrew Lloyd, he mentioned that some of his sessions back in the day when he worked with Mac Miller, that there were opportunities for him to record, but he didn't understand Pro Tools and the recording process. So, there was an opportunity there that really wasn't able to get fulfilled. And you guys as younger producers, I wouldn't want you to feel so comfortable in FL Studio, but then when it comes to Pro Tools, there's situations that you could slam dunk an opportunity, but it just kind of passes you by because you don't understand what's going on that screen. So yeah, it's definitely a balance that needs to go on between the older generation and the newer generation. Let's go ahead and get back into the video.
And then it kind of like dawned on me to ask him this question. I was like, man, how many of y'all are like recording in like Pro Tools, Logic or whatever? And he was like, none of my homies record in Pro Tools. Like, he's like, Pro Tools, that's for like y'all older guys. He said, like, I seen your video and everything on YouTube. Like, I know who you are. He like, I seen your video and stuff like that on YouTube because I like to watch tutorials and everything or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. The young man is watching the brother or whatever. And he was like, it is true. He was like, man, he's like, y'all like are on the Pro Tools stuff, which is cool. That's for like the older generation. But the newer generation, we didn't grow up into that. And that's what I've been saying for a very long time, because I've been seeing over and over again, when these kids come into the studio, a lot of these kids are recording their vocals and everything in FL Studio. Don't know what's going on, don't know how the network and everything is going on between these kids, but they're recording a lot of their songs in FL Studio. Now, am I saying that 70% of the songs that come into the studio are recorded on FL? I'm not saying that. But I am seeing an uptick of artists that are coming to the studio over the past couple years that are recording on FL Studio and other programs other than Pro Tools.
It makes sense.
Am I saying that Pro Tools is done with? No. Am I saying that Logic is over with? Studio One, Cubase? Am I saying Reaper? Am I saying any one of those are done? I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that a lot of younger artists who are born past like 2005, they are now producing, recording, and mixing in FL Studio more than ever. Now, like I said before, it's not like I'm just seeing 80%, 70, 60%. I'm seeing maybe like 30% now. I didn't used to see it at all back in the day, because most of the people that I was dealing with were 80s and 90s babies, okay? But these 2000s babies, especially these mid-2000 babies and late 2000s babies, are now doing everything in FL Studio.
And that makes a lot of sense, especially with the payment model that FL Studio has. If you purchase it, I've purchased FL Studio, a legit copy, and you know, I just get free updates all the time. So if you're a person who's born in the 2000s, logically, why would you keep wanting to pay for your program over and over again? Like, unfortunately, Pro Tools is having the users do. Why wouldn't you just buy it once and just continually get the free updates? Not only that, but it's also interesting to see how far FL Studio has come. You know, I first became aware of FL Studio back when it was called Fruity Loops. Now it's FL Studio. Now it just keeps getting better and better and better. So I want to give a shout out to ImageLine for being so dedicated to understanding the landscape, not being, you know, super old school and feeling like everybody needs to catch up to them. You know, FL Studio knows the wave. They're in touch with the different content creators. They're in touch with the different people in the studios who are shouting them out and, you know, always pushing their brand. And they are listening to the community. So I want to give a special shout out to ImageLine for that. And also, if you use FL Studio, make sure you check out the link in my description, because I have FL Studio Patcher plugins that's really crushing a lot of the paid stuff that's out there. They're 100% free. Check them out, use them, and cook up some great fire. But let's go ahead and get right back into the video.
A lot of them not coming to the studio. They're doing everything at the house. Now, we can go with the whole debate and the whole argument of that's why music sucks right now, because people are not doing it the right way. They're not using the right tools. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. Well, guess what? Somebody likes it. And back in the 2000s, people didn't like, the older people didn't like the records then, and then the older generation didn't like the records from the 80s, and the older generation didn't like the records from the 70s. So at the end of the day, this is something that's going to be ongoing forever. It's just that older generations don't like what the new generation is doing. That's just what's going to happen.
It's also interesting with home studios. I remember back in the day, it was even kind of taboo to have a home studio. You know, people would kind of make fun of people like, oh, you're recording at the house, or you must be recording in the living room. You got to go to a real studio. And just how the shift and the tide has changed over time, where it's cool to record at home. It's cool to have a home studio, especially as long as it's, you know, treated and professional and everything like that. Let's go ahead and get right back into the video.
I'm saying from a technical side right now, you're seeing kids that really want to record, make their beats inside of one program. And the program that a lot of these kids grew up on was FL Studio. You got to think a kid that was born in 2005 was only 10 years old in 2015. A lot of them didn't get introduced into producing until they were probably about between the age of like 14 to like 18. So you got to think a lot of these kids that were born in 2005, they're just now starting to get into music. Some of them are like 14 and 15 years old, you know what I'm saying, when they got started. So you got to think a baby that was born in 2005 and 2019, they were 14 years old and they started making beats on FL. And you got to think how advanced FL was compared to the FL that was out in 2005.
Exactly.
So these kids are now being able to record, produce, and mix inside of this program, and they don't know anything else. Because a lot of these kids didn't go to some of these schools like how they had it before. You got to remember, a lot of these schools had different contracts with like Avid and stuff like that. And so now when you would go to certain schools, certain audio schools, you was basically being taught to use Pro Tools, because we all know that in, the early 2000s, Pro Tools was the best thing to do, especially if you had hardware and you were trying to do like this hybrid thing. It was pretty much the only thing you could probably use at that time was to, use Pro Tools because of the hardware connection capabilities.
That's the interesting thing to say, especially for, the producers who were born in the 2000s. They really don't know anything different. I know I've worked with different recording artists, and some of them thought it was a bit strange that I would make a beat in FL Studio and then bounce it down to Pro Tools to do the recording process. Some of them were like, can we just do the whole thing in FL Studio? And I don't think FL Studio really had the recording capabilities back then when I ran into those incidences. So now, this new generation, they see all the capabilities, they see the different content, recording and making songs that sound good. So they're going to say, hey, why not? Why do I have to get something else when ImageLine, FL Studio has everything I need? Not only that, touching on the different music schools who, kind of had deals and contracts with different programs. Recently I was at SAE in Atlanta for a music conference, and I noticed how many of the different computers had Logic open, and I wasn't seeing too much Pro Tools. So I don't know if there's something going on there. Maybe I just spilled the beans on something. Hopefully I didn't, but that was interesting to see. And I've also ran into younger engineers out here who are using Logic as well. So is Logic kind of creeping up as well as the next, industry standard DAW? Who knows? But, it's a lot going on. Let's get right back into the video.
As time went on and people started doing more stuff from the home, and home studios became this big thing, a lot of these younger generation kids were not on that. They were on strictly FL. I talk to kids even from, like from 2018. I'm like, yeah, I use Logic. You know what I'm saying? They're like, nah, man, we do everything in FL. If we make a beat in it, we might as well record in it and do everything in it. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I thought it was kind of crazy then. I was like, why would you make the beat and record in FL? Why would you record in FL? Nobody records in FL. But apparently a lot of people did. And then now with the new capabilities of what FL Studio can do, that's what a lot of people are doing. You got to look at people like, what's his name? Blackboy Max, that's on Twitch.
Exactly.
He's recording all of these top artists coming into his spot. He's recording them in FL Studio. He's recording them in FL. So now you have a whole generation, and think about this. You got all of these kids that watch this man make beats in FL and record people in FL, and you don't think that these kids ain't watching this and saying, hey, that's the program I need, because my favorite streamer right now that has a gazillion people watching the stream is using FL Studio. So we're going to record in FL Studio, and while he's recording in FL Studio, he's doing it effortlessly, and it looks easy to use.
One thing I've seen about Blackboy Max's sessions is he has a lot of fun in his sessions. He's doing the recording engineering, but he's also doing the vocal production. He's also, really coaching the artist and maintaining a lot of energy. And, that's a really big thing about, recording and working with artists. They want someone who can help coach them through the process. Some artists just want you to hit record, but other artists want you to add your input into it. And I really like that. I do see some limitations currently in FL Studio's recording process. One, I tend not to see Blackboy Max and other people use things like markers that can be used in Pro Tools to separate the different portion of the song, so you could just hop through different areas. Two, I see sometimes he's just using a slider instead of the grid to fly the vocals over. Honestly, sometimes I've even got anxious watching some of his content. I'm like, how are you flying the hook over and making sure that it's on beat without, the grid snapping and getting everything in place. And also, I don't really see any type of playlisting feature in FL Studio when you're recording. Playlisting, for all the producers who don't know, is you're able to have multiple takes under the same area of the vocal recording. So knowing image line, that's something that they probably have on their roadmap to add to the recording functions, because they're paying attention. And honestly, they could even be watching this video. I wouldn't be surprised if they left a comment on this. That's how in tune they are with the community. So, initially I always did have my hesitations on seeing artists and producers and, engineers work in FL Studio outside of beat making, but Bolo's definitely making some great points. So let's go ahead and get back into the video.
Then you got several younger artists right now who are literally recording their whole albums and everything in FL Studio. It's crazy right now. They even have producer like vlogs and stuff right now with some young top producers who are doing everything in FL Studio. Now, don't get me twisted. Now, there's a whole bunch of people that are using Logic to do the same thing. Studio One, I use Studio One a lot. You know what I'm saying? I use Logic a lot still. There's people doing it in Ableton. There's a lot of people doing that. But for what I'm seeing right now in the hip hop space, I don't know how it is in any other space, but I know hip hop, some R&B, but mostly in the young hip hop space, a lot of these kids right now are recording their songs in FL Studio. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that it's going to just take over within the next 5 years or whatever like that, but I am seeing an uptick of kids bringing their stuff to the studio, and either they have to bounce it down before we put it in Pro Tools, or it's in a FL Studio zip file. You know what I'm saying?
One thing I think of is, I think this message that Bolo was putting out is more so directed towards producers and engineers around my age and his age. We're in that, that roughly that older quote unquote demographic. So I want to give some information to the younger producers and artists out there who may be watching this video. It is cool to, if you like to demo your stuff in FL Studio, you like to record, create those different songs, you and your friends enjoy them, you get all your vocal effects the way you want to, you're having fun, you're being creative. You don't have to be super, super technical to get all this energy out there, all your emotions out. So definitely, if that's what you rock with, that's what you rock with. Those limitations of FL Studio, sonically in the past that people kind of stereotyped it on, are totally out the window. You can definitely make an awesome, awesome sounding song in FL Studio. With that being said, once we transition from the demo, once you transition over to the final product, 9 times out of 10, that final product is going to be mixed in FL Studio. You're going to give the stems over to the engineer, your vocals, everything is going to be given to the engineer. They're going to be dropping it into Pro Tools, maybe Logic. So you as a producer or an artist, you still want to know how to operate Pro Tools at least to a baseline level. Because let's say you go to some type of cook-up, there's a way that you can really connect with the engineer if you do understand Pro Tools. You can ask them questions like, hey, how long have you been using Pro Tools? What's your favorite stock Pro Tools plugin? You're going to probably tend to know a bit more of the technical jargon if you are using Pro Tools, that you can really start to connect with the engineer. Have fun creating your demo songs and your references. But if you want to transition to like higher level things, please at least understand how Pro Tools works.
And that's the first thing I always ask with a lot of people, like, what do you use to record it now? Because it used to be a no-brainer. Oh, it's going to be Pro Tools. But now you don't know if you're going to get an FL project. You don't know if you're going to get a Logic project. You don't know if you're going to get a Studio One project. You don't know if it's going to be Ableton. You got to get all of it. To be honest with you, got to get all of it. You got to get Reaper, too. You got to get all of that. And Cubase. You got to get all of that stuff. But one thing I do know is, don't write off not learning how to use FL to record, especially for people who are trying to have studios, who are starting up studios, or people who have studios. Get on there and try to learn this program, because I'm telling you right now, it might not be this year, might not be next year or the year after, but I know it's coming soon to where they're going to, get things a little bit better in that program, to where the inserts and everything are going to be a little bit better. The routing is going to be much better if you want to, group certain tracks or to send certain tracks to an aux and everything. I know it's coming. And you can mark this video if you think it's not, but I know it is coming, because a lot of the features that people were asking for has came to FL. Now, they kind of spoon-fed it over the years, but that's a business. But at the end of the day, it is coming. And the more and more of these kids that are seeing their top influencers and their top artists and their top producers using FL Studio, just like how it was in the mid-2000s, when it's like, oh, everybody looked at FL like it wasn't nothing. And then more and more people started using it. And then it became that one program was like, oh, that's just something for the kids. That ain't really got nothing to do with it. Now it's the most used DAW to make beats right now.
Yes.
Amongst young producers, let's put it like that. It is the most used DAW amongst young producers and even older producers. But it's the most used DAW right now for young producers to make beats in.
I want to touch on the point that Bolo had there about studio owners having all those different programs. Now, I think it's good to have programs like, of course, Pro Tools, Logic, and Studio One. But from my point of view, I feel like we kind of need to have some type of uniformity. If we're jumping from program to program to program each week, there could be a little bit of confusion or a learning curve. Maybe you hire a new engineer, all they know is Logic. Maybe you hire a different engineer, or another engineer has to step in and substitute. There's some type of update that wasn't placed on Studio One, and there's a crash, and all that engineer knows how to do is use Studio One. That could be a bit confusing, and that could just cause some type of conflict, especially, on the last minute. And there's a lot of last minute issues that tend to happen when it comes to recording and working with different musical artists. So I would still say, from my point of view, it's important to have that one central program that our studio is going to use. This is the main one, and some of us know how to use the other ones as a backup. Maybe Logic, Studio One, and possibly FL Studio. And then if there's a demand for the use of FL Studio, of course, you can adjust then. But just trying to train every engineer on all those programs, I think that's a recipe for possible last-minute conflict, possible last-minute confusion. I would definitely lean on the side of, this is our studio's main DAW for recording. I think it is still important to have that one central main DAW for studio owners.
And you're starting to see an uptick in Reason and stuff like that too. I'm seeing a lot of Reason stuff too. But so far as like, and I know some people gonna be like, I don't believe that. But as for young producers making beats in the DAW, FL Studio is a top. Is the top one I see.
Oh yeah.
When these guys come into the studio. So I had to learn it. I've learned it years ago, but not to the extent of what these kids are learning it now. And I'm telling you, you got to either go out and get it. Well, you got to get it, and you got to go out and you got to learn it. And you got to learn how to record in it. Okay? You got to learn how to record in it. You got to learn how to mix in it. You got to know how to add aux tracks in it. You got to know how to sidechain in it. You got to know how to do everything in it. Route certain hardware into it. You got to know how to do all of that stuff with that right now, because in a few years, it's going to be more people recording and making beats and mixing in that program.
You know, with that point, I just still don't know if I quite agree with that. Do engineers, producers who work with recording artists, do you need to know how to record in FL Studio to that degree? This is just my point of view. I feel like whatever program that you guys use at home to create what you create, that's perfectly fine. But once you get with me, I need to get you here into my home base, my workflow in a way that, you know, makes sense to me. So if you guys are able to get certain effects, certain type of ways that you do things, that's great. That's awesome. More power to you. But when it comes to record here, I feel like we're kind of, and I don't want anyone to take this any kind of way, but I'm taking things up to a higher level, to a more professional level. And Pro Tools is complex, and there's a lot of different areas that, you know, maybe someone who records with FL Studio may not be aware of. I might do something and they might be totally amazed in Pro Tools, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that that was possible. Or how did you do that? Or I wish FL Studio had those features. And like you said, of course, it's just not available now. So FL Studio may get to that point later where you can do all the different things with grouping, clip groups, you know, playlisting, things of that nature. But I just feel like there's so many layers to a program like Pro Tools that I just feel like I'm taking what you guys have and I'm pushing it up to this higher level. So if I am working and using a program that's a little too complex for you guys to understand, that's perfectly fine. Maybe you don't need all these different options. You just don't need it. You don't need all these different options, but Pro Tools just has so much to it. So, you know, maybe I will be proven wrong in the next few years, like Bolo is saying. But as of now, I feel like you recording that in FL Studio. Now let's put this in Pro Tools and, you know, watch me take this up to the next level. So
you seen how it was in the mid 2000s to where it is now. Okay? It's going to grow. It's going to grow. And you don't want to get left behind with this, because that could be money that you're losing on the table. And I know some people are like, oh, I'll never work on our. Hey, look, that's your prerogative. Okay? That's what you want to do. But I'm telling you right now, beware. Beware. FL Studio is coming. Okay? All the other programs are coming, because right now things are kind of leveling out right now. You know what I'm saying? Pro Tools is the king of the hill, still is. Okay, let's just keep it honest. It still is. But it's not up here at the top like this anymore. Everything else is kind of like coming like this, and you see FL coming like a rocket right now. And you better be ready for it. You better be ready for it.
That's a good way to put it.
So yeah, you know, I've seen this climb coming for a little minute, and I've seen the capabilities of what FL can do. So like I said before, if you're a studio owner or if you're somebody who does not know how to use FL, I highly suggest you to learn how to use it, because it's coming. I'm telling you.
All right, so that was a great video. Shout out to Bolo, the producer, for kicking off that great conversation that we have going on here in the production and engineering space. So how do you guys feel? Do you feel like FL Studio is going to be a formidable opponent in the next few years for recording DAWs? Please let me know in the comments. My name is Desmond A, and I'll be back with more great videos. Peace. Wait, before you go, make sure you go to DesmondASounds.com, where you can get free FL Studio patcher plugins, free loops, free guides, everything you need to level up your music production. Once again, go to DesmondASounds.com or click the link in the description. Go there now and totally transform your music production.